This is America, where artificial intelligence is promising to revolutionize the way we live and work. But as the technology develops at a breakneck speed, politicians are trying to work out how to regulate it. So what happens when AI videos and deepfakes collide with the world of politics? I'll have more on that later, but first, over to Neave in our Washington, D.C. studio.
Thanks, Bernard. An election environment fundamentally altered by technology. Artificial intelligence has moved from the fringes straight into the heart of mainstream political strategy. From high-stakes races in California to fierce Senate battles in Texas, campaigns are weaponizing AI to build rapid response ads and hyper-targeted messages, all at a fraction of traditional costs. It's something Americans have been getting used to. Turn on your TV, there's an increasing likelihood that the ads you'll see there are completely AI generated.
Did you ever wonder how Toys R Us and Jeffrey the Giraffe came to be? The son of a bike shop owner, Charles Lazarus, had a vision.
How are you going to spend right today?
Ribs, chicken, and some alligator for the big game.
So, all of those you just saw there, completely generated by AI. Clearly, companies are already using the technology to sell their products, and now AI is becoming a fixture of political advertising on both sides of the political divide to sell a message. Bernard Smith looks at the issues that's raising.
If one man's brave enough to...
Now, that's not the real former Vice President Kamala Harris, and that's not Gavin Newsom, Democratic Governor of California. It's all AI generated, made by a supporter of Spencer Pratt, the Republican candidate for mayor of Los Angeles. It's obviously fake, arguably an example of a long tradition of using satire to target political opponents.
Hi, it's Senator John Ossoff.
But take a look at this.
I just voted to keep the government shut down.
It looks and sounds like Georgia Democratic Senator John Ossoff.
Policy disputes between liberals and conservatives, because I see a president...
But this is the real one. The fake was made by the campaign team of his Republican rival.
Yes, it looks believable, but if we say AI is the problem, I think we're kind of missing the boat. It's the believability of the lie that's the problem.
I was selected because I am the ultimate diversity hire. I'm both a
This deep fake of Kamala Harris's voice prompted Gavin Newsom to pass a law regulating materially deceptive speech. But a California federal judge found it unconstitutional, striking at the heart of the First Amendment, which protects freedom of speech.
ultimate deep state puppet.
There's essentially no federal regulation of AI in political advertising. It's been left to the states, and 30 now have some sort of law that focuses on disclosure rather than a ban.
Oh, I love this one too. The Texas Capitol can be a hostile environment for our trans neighbors.
So this deepfake of Texas Democrat James Tallarico has a barely noticeable tag in the bottom right corner.
It's a small way to tell...
One of the things I think a lot of people find really troubling about AI is that at least when Ben Franklin made something up or William Randolph Hearst made something up, there was a person doing a thing.
Yes.
Now what we've done, we've taken the ghost out of the machine, right? Now it's, what's the machine think we're going to do? Like, there's nobody or nothing I can hold accountable, and it's fundamentally dehumanizing.
Following the lead of Trump's White House, it seems to be Republicans using AI more than Democrats in the run-up to the midterms. Although Gavin Newsom has frequently used deepfake video to troll the president.
You like Ike, I like Ike, everybody likes Ike for president.
It's a long way from the post-war years where catchy tunes were enough to win over voters. Those days are long gone, for real. Bernard Smith, Al Jazeera, Washington, D.C.
So while AI regulation is a global issue, it's particularly pivotal here in the United States. Without sweeping federal legislation, state and local governments are forging their own paths. States with big tech sectors like New York and California, for example, are leading the way with the most number of AI bills. Compare this with Florida, Texas, and Minnesota, where only a handful have actually made it to the state legislature. Well, let's introduce our guest panel now. Mike Sexton is a Senior Policy Advisor for AI at Third Way, looking at AI development and its impact on public policy and politics. And Patrick Tucker is Technology Editor for Defense One, a DC-based news site focused on the future of national security and foreign policy. It's great to have both of you here in the studio on This Is America. Patrick, if I can start with you, because how is AI changing the very nature of political persuasion? It speeds things up, we know, but does it actually alter the message that viewers are seeing?
Well, there's a lot of different ways that it can and is changing politics. You just saw examples of the sort of deepfake videos that circulate on social media. And this is kind of like the crude introduction to a broad reshaping. If you get a little bit beneath that and you consider persuasion politics, the factors that are known about a person, there's an MIT study that found that sort of trying to reach a voter on a single issue, that's only going to be like so effective. But if you can calculate and triangulate a nexus of different issues around that person, and then better predict how, for instance, different economic trends might affect them in the near future, then you can much more precisely tailor messaging. And also, and this is the part that I think a lot of folks are very concerned about, tailor a sense of reality that doesn't actually correspond to broad national trends, create a sense of a public institution that's false. And so there's a lot of room here for a lot of different creation of identity politics, the creation of new senses of reality that are false. But also there are tools to counter this. So there's 1,000 ways it's going to be changing politics.
All right, we'll get into the ways in which it's being potentially countered in a minute. But I do wonder, Mike, whether you see any kind of democratic benefit here. Does it essentially level the playing field, allowing candidates that are potentially less financially well-heeled than others to have a chance?
I think you could certainly make that case. I mean, I think that is why I would discourage an overly restrictive overly restrictive rules on AI in elections, because, you know, suppose you are that kind of an up-and-coming candidate, you use AI to help with your message, to help with your advertisements. As long as you're direct about what you're doing, I mean, there's nothing inherently dishonest about that. But I do worry a lot, as Patrick mentioned, about the persuasiveness of artificial intelligence. There was just a recent study just 2 weeks ago, but this has already even been proven before, that AI can be more persuasive than humans, actually. So I kind of see this as basically an accelerant for the existing polarization that we already have. Right. You know, we'll see how much it ends up affecting people on the middle. But my experience is that people tend to be most persuaded by political views that they are already sympathetic to. Right.
So amplifies preconceptions and people's political biases, you're saying?
Exactly.
Right. On the issue of whether AI can be more persuasive than the human voice, I mean, of course, people are hugely worried about an emergence of what's been called AI slop, isn't it? You know, people are just bombarded with messaging. It also makes it easier, of course, for bad actors to undercut authentic voices, Patrick, surely?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you're seeing a bit of an allergic reaction to the AI slop on the part of the public. And some of the examples that we just saw, they're very clearly detectable as slop. There is no regulation right now that prohibits slop or the masquerading of a deep fake as an actual candidate. Those will become more credible. But you're also seeing the public respond not just with allergy to AI, but increasingly to social media in general. And so now the question becomes a broader question of what is AI slop. And what is the intention of different folks that are trying to influence the political conversation? This is an area where I think that artificial intelligence could actually be of great public use to help understand where different narratives are coming from, give some people a sense of where they fit within those narratives. But that is incumbent on people to actually use it that way, or public institutions. And that's not necessarily in the interest of fake people that, or groups or candidates that traffic in AI slop.
All right, Mike, Patrick, let's take a pause. And before we move on, let's take a closer look at how AI ads work, particularly how AI political content spreads so fast here in the US and what the dangers are. Here's Rosalind Jordan.
A new era in U.S. political ads has dawned, for better or worse, thanks to the use of AI. And in a critical midterm elections year, the U.S. president is very much aware.
Artificial intelligence, which is amazing what's going on with that. It's going to be the biggest thing ever. We have to be very careful with it. It's both great and could be bad.
Just as the 2010 Citizens United Court ruling unleashed an infinite amount of spending on campaigns,
The numbers are a disaster! We don't have enough illegals!
2026 is rewriting every way campaign ads are created.
Free bus rides for illegals!
Whether it's prominent Democratic politicians saying unflattering things,
"Hey, what's up, Gretch? Don't worry, we got Michigan covered."
Or Donald Trump leading the charge against a Republican opponent, voters are bombarded with so-called deepfake ads, highly manipulated content designed to convince even the most skeptical audiences. And the public is growing resistant to AI's use. A recent poll found 42% of Democrats think AI is, quote, mostly bad. 27% of Republicans agree.
Oh, no.
The siren call of AI ads has already snared many political operatives. It's low cost, customizable, and quick to make. First, choose your subject. Figure out the reaction you want to trigger. Use apps to create your ad. Finally, flood social media. Of course, this isn't real, but AI technology is so good that it can fool just about anyone. And that's catnip for ambitious politicians. Rosalind Jordan, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Well, clearly Rosalind had an awful lot of fun making that. But in all seriousness, Mike, where are we in our ability to spot deep fakes? Because as we saw in that report, there are some videos that are obviously using AI, and you know it's artificially created. Mm-hmm. Others, though, potentially much more nefarious. How do we decode one from the other?
Mm-hmm. So it's very, very difficult to, just simply take a video, put it into some program and determine for sure, is this real or is this fake? Many of the companies that are developing these image generators, video generators, including Google, are putting in watermarks. Oftentimes these are even invisible watermarks. So, if I use AI to, let's say, edit a video for a business, I don't need something that says, Sora popping around the screen. But if someone did want to check, they could take that and it would detect the watermark. And would say, because it sees the watermark, this is an AI-generated video. So there is that capability, and companies are moving on that. But it's not a foolproof system to detect or that you can't overcome with using a different model.
Right. And Patrick, is the pace of technology like that to be able to flag when something is AI, is that moving at the same speed as the AI technology itself?
Both in terms of the audience response and in terms of the funding for detecting or preventing or pointing out to the user that something is fake versus real, all of those are very lagging. By the time a user absorbs a particular truth, trying to convince them otherwise is incredibly difficult. And it doesn't just apply to deep fakes, it applies to misinformation generally. The only real, the best protective against that is actually to tell people about how they're going to be targeted with this information before they are targeted. Statistically, that's like the best sort of shot that you have. But I think that like the real protection or the real kind of solution lies in one of those other statistics that just came up showing increased levels of trust around the issue of AI in general. See, the companies that are today, especially company leaders, that are very enthusiastic about a far less regulated environment, are now facing a public that is growing, especially in the United States, increasingly wary across political lines of everything that they're selling. And I think that backlash is kind of our best hope for changing behavior and creating an environment where there's more solutions that can be brought to bear.
Mike, it sounds like this could be a real danger to democratic trust across the board.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, there's something known as in our field as the liar's dividend, where essentially because there is this existing distrust, this existing knowledge that, if I see a video of a candidate I like, that may not be a real video. It enables people who may lie, who may say something didn't happen or may allege something happened that didn't. Because of that distrust, there is a greater incentive to be dishonest.
Right,
So
the liar's dividend, is that
yes,
what you called it?
The liar's dividend, yes.
I do wonder, and we were talking about this with the rest of the team earlier, if AI was around at the time of Richard Nixon, whether or not he would have got away with it, because it most certainly, Patrick and Mike, it makes our job as journalists very, very difficult indeed, if basically nothing can be true and everything can be possible, Patrick.
Yeah, I'm sort of terrified to think about what Richard Nixon might be able to do with artificial intelligence, as well as the White House plumbers. But I think it also may have made it more easy to detect Richard Nixon without, like, an elaborate and long investigation by the Washington Post. You can sort of deep throat things out much more quickly, theoretically. It does sort of accelerate everything. But I think that one of the larger threats that I don't think a lot of voters sort of appreciate, we think of campaigns as pushing people, motivating people to do a thing. Adversaries of democracy, they have a kind of different agenda. Yes, they want to motivate people using disinformation, et cetera, towards a candidate that perhaps they prefer for reasons that are their own. But they largely also want to disincentivize people to participate. They want to create cynicism about public institutions, about politics in general. The more people, like this is sort of a trademark of Kremlin disinformation efforts going back for a very long time. There's a small group of people you really want to motivate. Everyone else you want to convince that, hey, giving up, being indifferent, being cynical is the smart move. Every institution in your public has always been as corrupt as it's about to be. That's kind of a thing that you can accelerate with AI, because precisely as we just talked about, people are becoming exhausted, and that's a win too.
That's a hugely destabilizing prospect, isn't it? Look, before we move on, let's talk about the regulation surge, because lawmakers are really starting to care about this. Take a look at this data from the Association for Computing Machinery, because across the US, there's been a significant increase in AI bills debated in the past few years. In 2019, there were fewer than 50 AI-related bills at state level. After 2022, there was a real shift, with the number surging to more than 200. Despite the increased activity, few bills have actually become law, and many are still pending. Mike, so lawmakers clearly universally agree that something needs to be done about AI, but actually passing enforceable rules seems to be a completely different story altogether. Plus, I understand Congress has completely stalled on federal solutions like the Real Political Advertisements bill that would have forced campaigns to essentially put a disclaimer on their ads. Why is it so difficult to even get this basic level of transparency across the line?
Mm-hmm. I think the First Amendment creates a lot of challenges to trying to regulate this in a way that is actually fair and can be sustained over the long term. I mean, I think it's important to know that, artificial intelligence is not just something that's used by bad actors. Al Jazeera actually has a partnership with Google to help use Google and artificial intelligence to gather information more quickly. So, I think it's important, if someone is making an ad, they could use artificial intelligence to create something completely fake, or they could use it to simply touch something up. So when we have sometimes laws that are overly broad or overly strict, that may prohibit this kind of action, there becomes a free speech component to it. The court is very wary of imposing any of these kinds of limits on speech unless there's a really strong reason. The example I think pointed to where it's clearly would be inappropriate would be the Biden robocalls during the last presidential election, where someone had a deep fake of Joe Biden's voice calling voters from Vermont, I believe, telling them that there was some different polling information, essentially to dissuade voters. And that person was charged, fined $6 million, which is much more than it costs to do what he was doing. So I mean, if we can kind of legislate and work to kind of eliminate those really egregious cases, but for something that's more general, like just using artificial intelligence in an ad, I think it's easier to aim for something like disclosure than it is for something harsher, like some kind of a ban.
Patrick, do you want to come in on that? Why it's so hard to even pass basic transparency rules?
Well, for a lot of the reasons that we mentioned, there was across Congress a big reaction against an executive order that would have basically eliminated the ability of states to pass this regulation, vetoed. So now, on a state level, there's not really a chance for meaningful regulation. But the opponents of that did have a point. If you have 50 different legal environments to try and create innovative products, then you have a bit of a mess. And regulation moves much more slowly than this in general. Like the regulatory environment does not lend itself to this. So I think that adding sort of like piecemeal regulations to the way we govern AI isn't going to keep up with the threat anyway. What you could do, alternatively, is take the route that Estonia and actually Ukraine are taking. They're rethinking the entire public institution entity in terms of what AI now allows. But they have a very different relationship with their government in that country, in both of those countries, than we do. We have a lot of mistrust of government in the United States. I think it's sort of like healthy. It's part of the being an American. But the idea of empowering AI, using AI to empower public institutions, is actually a great idea. I'm not sure we're the right people to do it. We have to have that conversation.
Yeah, weirdly that you should bring up Estonia, because I was in Tallinn, the capital of Estonia, the very week that the Kremlin launched the biggest hack on any cyber network ever. It also opens a huge vulnerability, doesn't it, to nefarious actors worldwide when a nation is so heavily dependent on artificial intelligence, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I think artificial intelligence definitely enables our adversaries. I mean, in terms of simply cyber capabilities, the whole brouhaha over Anthropic's mythos model and then its Fable model. That's a whole nother segment here. Yeah, right. But in terms of, I mean, any kind of part of this of the adversary cyber offensive action, from writing the code to writing a good phishing email, all of these things are much aided by artificial intelligence, and I think it really asymmetrically enables the actors who are more unscrupulous or who have fewer resources, and so they're kind of grasping at straws to figure out what can they do to inflict harm in the context of a conflict.
Right. Mike, Patrick, let's pull in some more data for you, because, as you've already hinted, Patrick, there is a clear state-by-state approach to dealing with this, depending on the political leaning of that given state. The Association for Computing Machinery looked at voting patterns from the 2020 and 2024 presidential elections. There they are in the war over there. Nearly all 19 of the states voting for the Democratic Party in blue obviously introduced AI bills, and 24 states that voted for the Republican Party in red introduced far fewer bills. Mike, a fragmented map, so it basically means where you live increasingly dictates how AI is governed.
Yeah, it's true. It's an important thing to try to find some balance, because on the one hand, if we have all of these different laws that are applying to, for example, how is OpenAI, how is Anthropic, all of these companies, how are they supposed to develop their models? Versus, are we talking about how do these models get used, right? So I think in a nationwide, for the whole country, it's ideal to have a streamlined set of rules for the development of artificial intelligence, because 50 different rules will be too much for companies to comply with. But I think in terms of the application, for example, if one state decides, we really don't like AI in our video ads, and we would like to, have strict barriers to doing that kind of thing. I think that's the kind of thing where it makes sense to kind of let states experiment with that kind of approach. That's not going to hinder innovation too much, and I think speaks to the kind of federalist balance that we try to have in the United States.
Yeah, Patrick, going back to what you were saying about the Ukraine and the Estonia model, I mean, the European Union, understand, has single joined-up regulation across all 27 member states. Not possible here, clearly.
Right. And, the European Union and bureaucracy, it's sort of funny to think that the greatest benefit to the European Union and European Union bureaucrats has been the White House attack on the European Union as it exists. It's a little bit counterproductive. Where they are right now is actually in an interesting place. Bureaucracy in general sort of inhibits this stuff, but they are now, as part of a larger technology sovereignty initiative for Europe, they're embarking on a new course where they want to create if you're a large U.S. hyperscaler, this doesn't exist in Europe. They're very dependent on it. But Google, AWS, et cetera, they're being asked to create versions of themselves in Europe that abide by European laws. And they're taking a very different approach to this stuff that I think is in line with kind of what consumers want. So if you look at those polls showing increased distrust of AI among consumers, what they really want is control. And if you look at, for instance, when you talk to West Point cadets, this is a study out in May, they exhibit very different trends than the general population in terms of their approach to AI. They are both more skeptical of individual AI outputs and more hopeful about it in the future because they feel like, A, they've developed a relationship with it through training. But this is also key. They feel like they have control over the compute resources that goes into it. It's not a distant data center. They can interrogate where the chips, where they are that hold it, the data. They don't feel like their data is just always used against them. And they have some transparency to the model. If that were the model here, we would see a different conversation.
All right, one very brief question to both of you. Mike, if it can't be solved in the courts, does the burden does it shift entirely onto the tech platforms and the campaigns themselves to regulate themselves?
I think a lot of it does go to the platforms, and many platforms, YouTube, Meta, I think maybe X, I'm not sure, will have a policy of labeling AI content that I think is a very smart kind of policy to in the place of full comprehensive regulation, right? And some of this, I think also does come down to what the voters decide, if voters are attracted to largely AI-generated ads or are they turned off
Understood.
by it.
Well, look, it's been a pleasure speaking to both of you, Mike and Patrick. So thanks so much for your thoughts. A fast-moving technological landscape meeting a very slow regulatory way forward. Thank you for your time. Mike Sexton, Senior Policy Advisor for AI at Third Way, and Patrick Tucker, Technology Editor for Defence One. That's crossed live now that's crossed to Berners Smith and obviously Al Jazeera's global headquarters in Doha. See you soon.
Thanks, Neave. On the next edition of This is America, primary elections have been completed across several states over the last few months. What message have voters been sending to the leaders of both main political parties? That's on Wednesday at 18:30 GMT, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time if you're here in the US. Until then, from the entire team, it's goodbye for now.